What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. As you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about Mac Miller and the people charged with his overdose. If you guys are new here, hi, my name is Jess. I'm a person in long-term recovery who has served time in prison, and my entire crazy life story, including selling drugs, is in the description box down below. If you want to follow me on any other social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, that's $2. It's only ever gonna be $2. That is linked down below. I'm also a proud partner with Groups Recover Together. They are both in-person and online treatment. Their program strongly leans on harm reduction. They're 420 friendly and they understand substance use disorder holistically. I will leave my landing page with them in the description box of this video, as well as my vlog channel and my podcast. All of that is always in the description box. Okay, it's enough rambling. Let's kick this thing off. Before I read you an article from Rolling Stone that I saw pop up this morning, I want to start this video by saying I am well aware that this is a very sensitive topic. I know that his fans are mourning. I know that this is awful. It's a tragedy. And I know the feeling of wanting to hold people responsible when something bad happens to somebody that you care about, whether they're a celebrity that you don't personally know or someone in your life that you have had to bury. As someone that buries way more people than I would care to say out loud, I know that feeling, and I know this is hard to talk about. I'm gonna read this article from Rolling Stone, and we're gonna talk about this. Drug dealer accepts plea time with 17-year prison time in Mac Miller's OD death. Stephen Walter, 48 years old, has agreed to plead guilty to supplying Miller with fentanyl-laced counterfeit oxycodone pills in a deal that drops more serious charges, which is always the case. They always reduce the plea so that they get the person charged to agree to a guilty conviction so that they can put him behind bars. Most cases end in plea agreements because they're afraid, the person charged, they're afraid of more time. So typically when things like this happen, the person charged is afraid that they're never gonna see the light of day again. Prosecution is pressuring them. It's been years since Mac's death. So they thought this was probably the best deal they could get, hence the plea. So Miller was found dead at a San Fernando Valley, California home, September 7th, 2018. The rapper died of an accidental overdose to fentanyl, cocaine, and alcohol, according to the toxicology report released by the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. In 2019, 3 men were charged in connection to Miller's death. So almost a year after Mac was gone, these people were arrested. Cameron James Petit of Los Angeles was arrested September 4th, 2019, so almost exactly a year, for allegedly selling counterfeit oxycodone pills laced with opioid fentanyl to the rapper. An Arizona man named Ryan Revis, I don't know, was the second suspect arrested in the investigation. Police did not release details regarding his charges. A third man, Stephen Walter, was arrested for allegedly sourcing the lethal oxycodone that Petit sold Miller, fentanyl. Revis is reportedly facing additional charges, including possession of prescription drugs, drug paraphernalia, weapons misconduct, and the manufacturing of a prohibited weapon. All very serious charges. Before I give you my opinion on charging these people with the death of Mac Miller, I want to talk a little bit about how we got here in the first place. We're currently living in an opioid epidemic. It's a crisis in this country. Addiction is wiping out this generation. We know that prison does not work. We know the war on drugs doesn't solve anything. But before we get into that, how did we get here? How did we get here? The current epidemic that we are in is an epidemic of over-prescribing prescription pain medication. Prior to 1980, doctors were very hesitant to prescribe pain medication because they were afraid that their patients were going to become addicted to these substances. By the late 1990s, that completely changed. Doctors were prescribing opiates to their patients hand over fist. It was very common to be able to just go to a pill doctor, which are doctors that just prescribe pain medication constantly. So that is a huge swing that we saw in that decade, where prior to the 1980s, doctors were like, I don't think so. In the late 1990s, everything changed. Today, doctors prescribe more than 230 million prescriptions annually. Now, just so that we can get some kind of idea of how much that is, the United States consumes 80% of the world's pain management medications and opioids, but we have 5% of the world's population. Now, why am I talking about all of that? Well, it's essential to understanding the crisis that we're in right now. Talking about how we got here in the first place is going to be fundamentally how we solve this crisis that we're in. And the war on drugs and the opioid epidemic is a crisis. Now, I know that a lot of people talk about Big Pharma and they're the devil and they're evil. They play a role, but Big Pharma has always been around since before the 1980s. So yes, they play a huge role, and they're vital in ending these pill mill doctors that just prescribe pain management. I think another component to this is that doctors don't get to spend a lot of time with their patients. On average, doctors spend about 5 minutes per client or per patient in the doctor's office. And I know we've all experienced that. You know, the doctors are super busy, they're swooshing around, you see them for 5 minutes after you sit there and you wait forever, and they can't fundamentally figure out what is going on with you just in 5 minutes. So I think it's kind of a crutch, they want happy patients. So not that all pain management is a crutch, and I know there's chronic pain, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a lot of times doctors are very quick to prescribe pills to essentially make their patients happy so that they continue to come back. And doctors want to be doctors because they want to fix people. They want to fix these problems. They want to help, and they want to get that gratification and that sense of a job well done. And if a patient comes back and they're happy and they feel as though they're healed, then in the short term, that's a job well done for the doctors. Now, why am I talking about this when we're talking about Mac Miller? Because you very rarely see doctors held accountable for the overdose of their patients. You very rarely see doctors held accountable for substance use disorder in their patients. I think sentencing people to prison after they have sold a drug to somebody that passes away is yet again, this country adamantly and very publicly saying, we don't understand substance use disorder. I also think that sentencing dealers when someone has passed away because of this drug, it's very clear in my mind that we are just sentencing people to prison based on our emotions and not based on the fundamental understanding of addiction. Addiction is a complex disease of the mind. So who is responsible for Mac Miller's death? Well, Mac Miller. And as hard as that is to say, because I loved him too, and I was a fan too, I still listen to his music, as hard as that is to say, his addiction won. His addiction won. The disease of addiction won. And despite who put the drug in his hand, he was hurting, he was in pain, he was struggling with the disease of addiction and had been for a long time. And it just so happened that those people put the drug in his hand at that time and his addiction won that day. That is a tragedy. But I understand why people want to blame somebody. They want someone held accountable because it sucks to just say, Mac Miller died because of the disease of addiction. He was in pain, he was struggling. This is a crisis. We want to hold someone accountable because we're hurting. But I don't think that we should put people in prison based on this pain that we are feeling, even though I understand it. If putting drug dealers in prison ended the war on drugs, we would not be in a health crisis right now. People would not be dying constantly because of their substance use disorder. And we know, we have all the data to say prison does not work. Prison does not work. The reason why I don't want to incarcerate every single person that is caught selling and using drugs is because we know that does not work. We know that that does not curb addiction rates. We know that that does not help anyone. And we know that we can just as easily find drugs inside of prison. Because if you want to use a drug, you're going to find it. This country is failing when it comes to prison. Americans' prison system is a huge embarrassment, and it is a failure. I've also adamantly said that drug addicts need treatment, drug dealers, prison. However, in this specific case, do we really know if these dealers were also addicts? How do we know if they were just selling to him to supply their own habit? I haven't seen any articles on that and I couldn't find it. We don't know that person's backstory. We don't know if that person needed treatment as well. And the reason why I'm bringing that to the discussion is because we lost Mac Miller and these people are losing their lives as well. Did they suffer from addiction as well? I interviewed Morgan Godfin on this channel. She was an addict who sold to her best friend who overdosed and died, and she was sentenced to prison because of it. Now, that happened in the state of Oregon. Oregon has since decriminalized drugs. That doesn't mean that they're legalized, it means they are decriminalized. Because Oregon recognized what we're doing is just hurting the system. We're spending millions of dollars on these trials. We're sentencing people to prison when they sold to pay for their habit. We're just hurting more people. We're hurting more addicts. When I see that this person was sentenced to 17 years for supplying Mac Miller with the drugs that killed him, I know that a lot of people are like, you should have got life. I understand why you're angry. I get it. I hear you. And I also know that this person that was sentenced today, or that was sentenced yesterday, also had prior convictions for drugs, which tells me that this person struggled with drug use. Now, I can't confirm that. I'm just speculating here. I didn't see an article that, kind of gave his backstory. I didn't watch the trial. This is the first time that I've heard of it, even though I knew that some people were arrested. And back then, I didn't feel right about it. It just didn't feel good to me. You guys have also heard me say that I deserve to go to prison. But there's a big difference between sentencing someone to a few years for selling drugs and sentencing them to 17 years in prison in California when that person is 48 years old. What kind of life can they ever have again? And I know some people are gonna say, well, Mac Miller's gone. He doesn't have a chance anymore. He's gone, he's not with us anymore. What chance did he have? He struggled with the disease of addiction. When I was in my active addiction, I did hear that people were going to be sentenced if you died of an overdose. And I wanted to wear dog tags that said, please don't sentence my dealer with my death. I wanted those drugs. I asked for those drugs. I begged that dealer for those drugs because when you're suffering from the disease of addiction, you just want to feel better. It is a constant battle of never feeling good. It's a constant battle of just wanting this pain to go away. It's a constant battle of give me those drugs. I asked for them. I took them, knowing full well that I could die. I didn't want someone else sentenced with my death. No, we're never gonna know what Mac wanted because he's gone. And again, that is a tragedy. And I know why people are upset. I know why people wanna seek vengeance. I know why people wanna see these people behind bars. I completely understand it. But I just wanted to make this video to maybe talk about why that's not necessarily a good idea and maybe just bring a different perspective to the conversation. Leading up to his overdose and death, it was also well documented that he was in good spirits. He had a sober coach, and from all accounts, he was happy and doing well and smiling and laughing, and his assistant found him, or his sober coach found him when she tried to wake him up. But all accounts prior were like, he's very happy, he's in good spirits, he's emotionally and mentally well. That's what depression looks like. That's what addiction looks like. Addiction has the world believing that you're okay when deep down you're struggling. Mental health and depression tells the world, I'm okay. Let's laugh, let's smile, because I don't want anyone else to feel the pain that I'm feeling. All the while you're dying inside. I want to see America do better with the opioid crisis. I want to see America do better with our prison system because it's failing. I want to end the war on drugs because it's not helping anybody. I genuinely don't want to upset anyone with my perspective, but I don't think we should constantly be putting people in prison for using and selling drugs. I think because we have tried to restrict drug access so heavily on the streets, it's just ramped up the demand. And where there's a demand, there's always going to be a supply. The tighter that we restrict drugs in this country, the more drugs will flow in. It's kind of like if you hold sand in your hand, it's just gonna sit there, right? There's just gonna be sand there, and we know that it's there, just chilling. Everyone can see the sand. We know that it's a problem. We're eventually going to have to put this sand down, right? What happens if we squeeze our hand really tight? All of the sand pours out of our hand and gets everywhere, and now it's a problem. Well, I kind of think about the war on drugs like that, is that we've just squeezed it to death and there is just stuff everywhere. So, in closing, if you're not going to sentence doctors for the overdose death of their patients, don't sentence people that are trying to sell to support their own disease of addiction. If prison was a deterrent for the disease of addiction and the underworld of selling drugs, if prison was a deterrent to this, our prisons would be empty. If our prison system was working, our recidivism rate would not be sky high, upwards of 70% in the first 3 years. If prison was a deterrent to a disease, we would not have a crisis right now because everyone would say, I'm not gonna put this in my body because I could go to prison. But prison is not a deterrent for a disease. America needs to wake up and start treating addiction like the disease that it is and stop punishing people because of this addiction. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm gonna end today's video here. As always, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay in recovery, whatever that looks like to you, because there's no wrong way to get better. And I will see you in my next one.